Marcos, great to see you. To begin with, could you lay out for us what's happening and how it came to this?
Okay, so this really started on Wednesday when we had the Twitter Files Brazil come out. So the Twitter Files, as the audience should know, is a series of reports that are coming out of Twitter. Elon Musk has released internal emails exchanged within the company to reporters to audit them and to get to what was going on in the company before he took over. Now, this is the first instance of Twitter files coming out that are related to Brazil. And what they essentially showed on Wednesday was that during the 2022 presidential campaign, Twitter was pressured by court order to illegally disclose information of people based on hashtags they used. They were pressured into censoring people both inside the country and abroad. They monitored and were used as a tool to censor congressmen, and all of this was relating to a single side of the political spectrum, to the conservative side on the 2022 elections. The outcry that came after the files were published basically led to, public outrage in Brazil, and after that, Musk himself started confronting Brazilian authorities about that, or at least questioning them about it. And then during the weekend, we just saw it erupt with Justice Alexandre de Moraes, the lead authority which was perpetrating these actions during the 2022 elections, having not a public spat against him, but putting him in an inquiry, a legal inquiry, to investigate whether he'd be part of certain digital militias engaged in quote-unquote fake news, which is itself a controversial inquiry in Brazil that has been going on for 5 years, trying to claim sort of fake news crimes that aren't even clear in Brazilian law. So that's basically the gist of it.
Okay, so from the perspective of a journalist in the news industry, how could this ultimately impact freedom of the press as well as freedom of speech?
Maybe Americans are not that clear on this, but for international observers that are, keeping an eye out for Brazil, Brazil has been going down and down an authoritarian path for a while now. And freedom of speech has been severely impacted in the country. That was especially so during the 2022 elections. But even now, lots of subjects, we're in that gray zone where you're not sure whether you can talk about something or whether you can't. It's as if rule of law doesn't fully apply in a series of instances. Actually, 4 Brazilian congressmen were in D.C. on March 12 to denounce that on a press conference which was called by Congressman Chris Smith, and denounced that abroad, including the son of former President Jair Bolsonaro, Eduardo Bolsonaro, which was there. And just to give an idea of how bad it is, Brazilian journalists who are living abroad have their social media blocked in Brazil, have had their bank accounts canceled, have had their passports invalidated by Supreme Court order. And it's not as if there was a clean, due legal process for that to happen. It's very unclear legally the basis for that to have happened. So free speech is endangered in Brazil for a while now. What this does is that it threatens to further, degrade freedom of speech, especially with the possibility of X being blocked nationwide, which is something that's reportedly being discussed as of yesterday. We might see some of that today. I wouldn't be surprised if it actually happened, if X was actually blocked in Brazil.
Okay, we'll be keeping our eye on that. So how significant is Elon Musk's defiance, do you think, at this time?
I think it's very, very significant because the international community maybe was not aware about this to the degree that it is now after Musk's defiance. I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize the hard left socialist past of Lula da Silva. I think a lot of people, especially in Europe, think he's some sort of environmentalist. But there is a deep authoritarian past to the Brazilian hard left, and I think the international community is now coming to grips with it. It's getting to see how endangered freedom of speech is in Brazil. The awareness is a big deal, but not only the awareness is a big deal. Right now, there's the possibility of the U.S. Becoming more and more aware of this, and of the U.S. actually doing something about it. As I've said, a few congressmen were in D.C. on March 12 with a few journalists, and they were discussing the possibilities of U.S. action against Brazilian descent into authoritarianism. I think this brings awareness and a whole new level of possibilities to that.
And so as people gain more awareness, for everyday people gaining that awareness, what can they do if they're concerned about free speech in Brazil?
Well, I'm not sure I can answer that question, Steph. I'm not even sure what Brazilians can do. It's funny because like 5 or 6 years ago, it would be unimaginable that people would be so afraid to speak up to authority in Brazil. I mean, the things you would see in Brazilian media 5 or 6 years ago were, just like you'd see in any free country. Political pundits would try to, bring power to account, hold power to account. But that's basically impossible now in Brazil. It's basically impossible because even people who are willing to speak up, they're just against a dead end. What are they supposed to do if their bank accounts get canceled, if their passports get canceled? I don't know what Brazilians can do, and I don't know what foreigners can do, but awareness is surely a great first step.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Marcos Schotgues, for keeping us in the loop, editor-in-chief of the Epoch Times Brazil. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.